I always get a good feeling coming here. You know, this is, I've lived in Long Beach now longer than I've lived here, but this is, that's where I grew up after we came from Mexico. So it's, I like the simple life here, I like the farm life. I've not rolled down the windows, but you'll smell manure, and it's different. It's not what you smell in LA. So no, that's a sense of comfort when I start pulling up, When we first came from Mexico, we shared an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment with a family of 6, and we were at that moment a family of 9. My dad rented the living room where we all slept, and I remember waking up and looking outside and seeing cars, which I wasn't used to seeing paved roads. We talk about seeing running water and having our first experience of seeing television. This is where our life in Lemoore began.
Once we were in Lemoore, the first weeks were just very happy. It was a beautiful place, a lot of greenery, running water, like the streets, everything just seemed different.
Lemoore, I saw this town and it was like, wow, it's beautiful. I really liked it. And then I just wanted to see places. I wanted to see the whole town. I mean, the roads were clean. There were nice cars. I wasn't used to that. And the lights, I thought, this is beautiful. This is it's like a dream, Yeah, I was very impressed by that. And the houses too.
Arriving in America, we arrived at night. So I wasn't too impressed. Definitely there was more lights. I mean, the streets were lit. Housing looked a little different,
The only thing I can tell you that I like right away was the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I have never had that in Mexico. So I remember, this is so bad, I remember getting up at night to make myself a peanut butter jelly sandwich with nobody's approval. And I think to this day, I feel guilty about it.
One of my first experiences that I have never had before was having cold milk. I have never drank cold milk in my life. We always had our cows, so we would just drink it nice and warm. And then I had never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was the first time ever, but it was the best thing ever.
One of my fondest memories living here is I remember just playing in the backyard and playing with sticks. In Mexico we didn't have any toys, so it was very common for us to just kind of make toys out of sticks and kind of assemble them together, play with them and wrestle them. And so as I see this back area, I remember spending a lot of time back there with my brothers and sisters and kind of making the best of our situation.
You don't know people that you can play with, so you just stay home, and that to me was boring. At first it's like we came and we're in somebody else's apartment. Of course we didn't want the landlord to find out that there were so many people, that we were there, because we had no permission to be there, only because the person that was living there allowed us to be there 3 weeks maybe before we got our own apartment.
I was used to being out in the wild, collecting wildflowers. We ended up staying with the family, so it wasn't even our own house yet. Just inside, I couldn't get over the fact that all our lives was gonna end up just being in a home with closed doors. I felt like I was suffocating. My first impression, I did not like it.
I wasn't used to a carpet under our feet. That was different. So there's certain things that were different. I do remember being really, really happy that my dad had a car. So he had I think I remember the year, it was a 1970 Torino, a Ford Torino. It was an older car, but it was a car, and in Mexico we never had a car. So to us that was a big news. My dad had a car and we could move around in the car here. Living with another family was not easy. And luckily for us, my dad managed to move us onto another apartment.
This is where we moved, so it wasn't too far from our first apartment. And one of the stories I remember is, it was only a 2-bedroom. And so me and my brothers slept in the living room, on the floor. That was, that was our bedroom per se. And I remember one time, someone actually broke into our house. They came in through the window and they stole our TV. My parents wake up and they see the TV gone, and they were, I guess, shocked. I mean, they were upset, but they were shocked that here we were, three of us, me, Marcelo, and Antonio, and we didn't hear someone actually come in, tippy-toe around us, take our TV, exit through the window, and we were, sleeping just fine. So
back in Mexico, we had a little black and white TV when we lived in Huejuquilla. Coming here and being able to watch TV, even though we didn't understand the show that we were watching, I mean, to us, that was big news. We were excited about that.
Although we live in La Victorina and there was no school, my father was one of the first men from La Victorina to take his family out of the ranch into the closest city during school timing. So when I come into the United States and now I'm in the classroom, I sense a good feeling that I'm along with everybody else. I'm on track.
Coming to America, we knew we were going to go to school. Although I was excited about it, I knew that it was going to be completely different to the school that we attended in Mexico. Even though there was a lot of Spanish-speaking students, I mean, the majority were English-speaking. So and we spoke zero English when we started school here. My first teacher was bilingual, so that helped a lot. He was able to speak with us, in our native language. But I remember that was in 4th grade when I started here. When I went on to 5th grade, the teacher was only English speaking, so that was very hard. I remember not wanting to go to school. I knew I didn't have a choice. I was going to go to school, but it was just difficult getting up in the morning and knowing that Mrs. Oliveira, she didn't speak Spanish. And Mrs. Oliveira had pretty high expectations of all her students, including me, who at that point I spoke a little bit, but not enough to be able to survive in the English classroom.
I don't think I was ready to go to school, but I knew I had to go. That was the hardest experience, going to school. I didn't know anybody, and the school was so big for me, and I didn't know where to go. I just stood there and I was like, okay, I don't know, I'm supposed to be in math, but where is math? I'm supposed to be in history or English because I had to learn English, but where do I go? And so I had to always ask someone to help me.
I definitely remember having my older siblings start going to school and learning English and then having them come back and teach me English. I remember starting my educational career and just going to a Head Start preschool program. And by that time, having older siblings, I would have my sisters, they would go in and they would volunteer in my classroom. So I kind of always have memories of my early school years and what that was like.
And once I got to know my way, then it was better, but the learning English and not being able to talk to people, that was hard. I experienced discrimination. I did, a lot. You looked at them and you said, oh, he's Mexican or she's Mexican. I want to ask her to help me, I don't know what the teacher said, and I don't know what to do with this paper. So in the class, you sometimes needed someone to help you. Some people didn't want to talk to you. They didn't want to help you. And so you kind of learned, oh, people aren't friendly here, so I'm not even going to ask them anymore. And then you always thought you felt like an outsider and you didn't fit in.
Trying to find that balance was a struggle for me growing up. And I remember being in high school and having other Mexican immigrant kids make fun of me. And they would call me names. They would call me a coconut because they said that, I was brown on the outside, but I acted like I was white on the inside, which I never really understood because I just was being me, right? And I've always been really proud of my background. So to me, I always wondered, why do I have to act a certain way because I'm Mexican? Why can't I, be on the cheerleading squad and do all these things? So it was almost like you felt like you didn't fit in.
And I remember, the first day of school, I have my new set of clothes for the first day, right? And I remember being teased because on the second day, I didn't have a new set of clothes. And I think that was the first time that I realized, oh, okay, we don't have what others have. That was probably the first time that kind of started getting into my mind that, oh, we are poor, and this is why we have to work.
In a way, I wanted to go back because I miss my grandparents a lot. And I thought, this is too hard. I knew my siblings were going through the same thing. But I think the older you are, the harder it is. Like when you're a teenager, you are already at that age where you want to fit in. While the younger siblings, they just, they didn't have a hard time. And the English, they picked it up sooner. But the oldest, especially Gloria and I, being the oldest, and maybe Luz also, for us it was very hard. So we didn't want to speak English. It was like, I don't want to say it because it sounds funny and I can't say it. I was very shy.
Home is always a place where you feel safe, you feel comfortable. We always went back to a home-cooked meal. Going to school, the other difference I noticed was that the food was different. Sometimes you liked the food that they served you at the cafeteria, sometimes you didn't. So I was always glad to go home and enjoy some of my mom's home-cooked meals.
Having dinner as a kid was great. My mom was busy cooking, and there'd always be like a pot of beans, rice. One of her best dishes was like enchiladas, and there was a unique way that she makes her enchiladas, and it was always joy. People were kind of coming and going. My dad would come when he was done with work, and maybe my brother was getting ready for his second job, so he'd quickly eat and leave. And I just remember my mom had us on the table, and we couldn't get up until, she kept just bringing food on the plate because she was that kind of mother. We were well fed.
At home, I was happy there, and I could talk to my sisters and just talk to them about how school went and the things they were doing.
At this point, by the time my little brother was born, there was 10 of us living there. My brothers, they actually didn't have their own bedroom. They slept in the living room on the floor. I remember us having to kind of rotate through dinner service because we couldn't all fit at the table. And so you'd have like the first round of group that would eat, and then the second round would come and eat. So I just remember it being, I want to say cozy, but there was a sense of like coziness to it because we were all very tight in this very small space. So I definitely do remember that.
When the attendant of this wooden crate wasn't looking, he would quickly drop the half-filled bucket into it. Then she would hear the noise, she would look around, and then he'd drop the full-size one, kind of giving the perception that both were full when they clearly were not.